The infinity loop is the tools of communication that heals and glues society back together. Our podcast is about disruption. We disturb the system that says it's normal and okay to communicate in the old, tired, ineffective, and unintelligent ways. There's a cynical belief rooted in so many of us in which we've told ourselves we can't help how we think or behave because our brains are so wired to react from low-level consciousness that's habitual and automatic. We're coming from our egos where they're running the show and not the infinity loop, where the ego is in a helpful place as a healthy sense of self, so it can help us be in our connected, abundant selves. We're saying by intentionally stepping into the infinity loop, we can affect every interaction we have and change the world. The Infinity Loop Group podcast is going to be about moving from the either-or to both-and way of thinking, where we transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches, in which we transcend the limitations of the old masculine and old feminine, but include what is healthy and helpful. What will emerge is a new, balanced, and integrated masculinity and femininity. The time has come where the divine feminine way of being is going to arise. We must learn from it as we let our old ways die, so a new human is resurrected and transfigured. That new human will truly change the world. This podcast is also about having a growth mindset, which hungers to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. We face our wounds, egos, and shadows in preparation to give this life everything we've got to make the world more connected and beautiful, because we're more connected and beautiful.
Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I'm Riley Burns.
I'm Chris DeVorce.
And we're going to dive right into where we left off last time with clarifying the infinity loop. That which is essential is always an invitation. The non-essential is always imposing itself. James Finley.
The infinity loop is an invitation for engagement. It's not bondage. Author Brené Brown, who's famous for her work on vulnerability, stresses the importance of discernment. She teaches when to and when not to be vulnerable. In the infinity loop, we don't use spiritual or communication models, tools, and principles as weapons against one another. We never say, you need to get into your true self. It's how we love and allow another's pain that empowers one to feel safe and bounce into their true self.
Right. It's a call to action to be your best self, not a using our spiritual practice to manipulate or bully someone into their better self.
Right. Or to be above them. Yeah. Diagnose them. In my not too distant past, when I was way too open, I opened my home to a meeting about racism. I had already lost my way in my relationship with the leaders, a couple. I denied my needs and my truth in exchange for a sense of community, thinking I was being supportive and wanting to grow. The meeting was what a meeting about racism shouldn't be. There was no connection, no awareness or inquiry. Later that night, when I shared my feelings about the meeting and that there was neither safety nor boundaries, I was told to take a deep breath and get into my big self. One of the leaders, the woman, told me my experiences weren't valid. My feelings, my view, even my expertise in the field of facilitation and dialogue was a pathetic delusion. There was neither compassion nor humility to acknowledge that she may have contributed to my pain. This is consistent with her behavior. She decided to set me straight in a condescending email. I forwarded the email thread to my support system and sent her an F off. Yep, I did. I continued to be mocked, messaged repeatedly after I told her and her partner to stop the confrontational and mean spirited messages and to please respect my boundaries. When I did eventually run into her, she looked at me as though I was the most grotesque human being to walk the earth. My friend who gave me feedback on this book suggested I needed to add in this story to anchor the principles of the infinity loop. I believe everything in my life can be in service of my growth and healing. By having this person in my life and allowing that situation, while ignoring the alarms I had going off in me months prior, I didn't learn that she was correct. I learned that I'm too open. I learned what I wrote in the later chapters, Lessons in Listening to Myself, and Support of Krista Died Tonight. I learned what I believe about how the topic of racism should be held. I learned all I hold dear about the need to create a safe container while teaching about dialogue and rules of engagement. Without proper facilitation, judgments and games ensue. She woke me up to stop abandoning myself and what I believe is right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's so important to have the right tools to deal with a problem, right? And
Something
so,
like, especially racism. Yeah.
well, it's
Or,
the racism is just a great example of
mm-hmm.
it. But it's from my experience of helping others, they go into a relationship problem trying to solve it by just talking it out without having the communication tools to talk about it. Either, like you said, one person is being too open, one person is playing a manipulative game, right? Are you genuinely trying to understand where someone's coming from, or are you just trying to get the response out of someone that you're looking for or the behavior that you're looking for,
So
even
good.
if it's not in the most truest form, but more of, like we said, uh, kind of manipulating someone into doing what you want instead
Mm-hmm.
of creating the environment that encourages that positive behavior.
That's why you're such a good relationship coach, because you teach the tools. You set the container, which is really good. And the other principle about this, there's so many lessons in this chapter of reflecting on life, is partly why I got in that situation was because of what my shadow, the way my false self and shadow does this dance that's like my spiritual pride, that I can handle it, or I'm so, my openness is almost, it's tied to this, it's the false self. It's like this concept of me just going, oh, I'm just so open and wanting to learn. I have no needs. I don't have any. It's just bullshit.
Well, from what I saw, it seemed more that your desire to help and be vulnerable and learn overrode the red flags
Mm-hmm.
and disturbances that were putting you in almost a dangerous
Yeah. Yeah.
situation where you do have the tools and feel like you can conquer the dragon because you have your armor, but not realizing that they're playing a different game. And if we
Mm-hmm.
aren't stepping in to connect, but to project, which to me
Mhm.
was very much what they were, everything what they was about was
Mhm.
projecting their reality onto you, and you are needing to accept their reality,
Mhm.
not have a dialogue or a nuanced dance.
Mhm. So good. Your discernment may tell you that entering into a confrontation with someone who isn't aligned with you will just traumatize the hell out of your nervous system. Sometimes an unproductive confrontation will distract you from what is yours to do or trigger you to respond in a way that isn't helpful for anyone. It may just be a fruitless mess. We don't owe it to anyone to hear their truth if they're an emotionally unsafe person who thinks it's their job to show us the light.
Oh, I mean, to me, that is just so triggering of having people yelling at you, telling you that this is their truth, this is how they feel, this is how you make them feel. And then now it is your responsibility to sit here and listen to them yell at you. And it's like,
That's so
oh,
common. Oh
well,
my
I
God.
mean, to me, it's the one of the biggest hurdles in my relationships that I've gotten over, of where when there was a problem, the communication wasn't, this is what you did, this is how it made me feel. It's let I know what your intention was behind what you did. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you how you made me feel, because now I know what you did
Mm.
was on purpose. Never even asking, but immediately assuming, because because their perspective has
Mm-hmm.
all the information, and
Mm-hmm.
now I need to share my truth, which is going to be yelling and pretty much attacking the person, even
Mm-hmm.
if everything they are saying is true. How they come about it is so demeaning and attacking that there is no room to heal or grow. Because even if I were to receive that criticism that maybe I felt was valid, because it's coming from a place of attacking, I now have to defend myself
Mm-hmm.
and no longer have the space to create the growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the
Taking care
where
of
it's the
yourself. Yeah.
opposite of where we're at, where you could say these same types of things in a more loving, connecting way, which brings the person in to want to change and maybe
Mm-hmm.
uh look at their own actions a little more deeply.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I love about our relationship, because we have such a healthy relationship. We can be so honest with each other, because we have the tools to be honest. And it was interesting what you just said, because I said in the meeting at one time when I was just like a wreck, I'm like, well, would you like to ask me why I looked away just then? No, they didn't want to know anything that could possibly be in my heart. They didn't want to check their assumptions. It was really interesting. Like that, everything I was practicing from dialogue and honesty was just, anathema to the way that this technique was going.
Well, with
Cra-
society as the victim culture, the victim culture is you can't question them.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I want to know why you think something if I'm the victim? I'm allowed to project my my
Traumatized,
well
internal
my
trauma.
my victim experience onto you, and you are just supposed to accept it and understand it, that I'm the victim because of your ignorance or your arrogance or
Something
something that
your
you're
people
doing.
that look like you. Yeah.
Right.
Very interesting. And I use this quote several times, but this is one of the principles of what Richard Rohr teaches: is if you do not transform your trauma, you will transmit your trauma. And that was what was happening.
Well, I think that's what's going on in our culture,
Yeah.
right? I think that's what's going on in society with this victimhood from the Me Too stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you weren't taken advantage by men or
Mm-hmm.
sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we are going about it that now every man is responsible for this, or
Right.
right,
Or you look over at a woman and now you're considered lure, what's the word I'm trying to say?
luring.
You're leer, you're just what's the word I'm trying to say? Yeah, leering.
Luring.
It's leering is the word I'm trying to say. And there's no ability to create going, oh, is that true? Or was he looking out the window? I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah, there was a famous video that was happening on that in on the internet that was going around where it was a gym person.
mm,
And so it was this girl who has a video up and is trying to claim that this
oh, right,
other
right.
guy is like creepily looking. And it's like he glances over it a few times, and people go, well, yeah, you have a camera out, you're doing things in a public gym. Maybe he's just curious about what you're doing. It's not like he's trying to sexually drool over you, but because there's been so
Mm-hmm.
much energy on this message that
Mm-hmm.
men only do this, then it's kind of just naturally in your mind of, well, I'm always a victim, so let me always look to where I could be a victim.
Or I could be a victim. Yeah. This might be a good place to bring up what it's really interesting. But
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
the other day,
definitely.
so it was interesting. The male leader of this meeting, the female leader never contacted me since, but he reached out to me 40 months after this event with the most beautiful letter apologizing for what happened at the meeting, the loss of the friendship of what an incredible friend I had been to him, and how sad he was, and what he learned. We're talking about critical race theory, and that he was like, why didn't you meet with us and help us see this? And I basically said, if it took you 40 months to figure this out,
They weren't willing to see what
they
it
what
was
because
because you were showing it to them.
she was so and he said she was just didn't know what to do, and that's why she didn't know how to reach you. And I've sitting with this was in 17, so this was 6 years ago. I had to look and go, when have I done that? I have done that. That's the infinity loop, is seeing ourselves in another, taking that in that stillness and looking at, where is the thing that we see in another person? When have we ever done it? And I used to, and I sometimes still have it, but because I see myself as a late bloomer, I'm 58 years old, but I will judge somebody for doing something in their 50s when I could go, I haven't done that since my 30s. And it's almost like they're too old to be doing that. And it's like, no, I've probably done it in my 50s, but I have done that too. I have pushed back past people's boundaries to be heard in my anger and my pain and my frustration. So I hold, I mean, I don't know if there's anyone in my life that I do not hold actually with love and compassion. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's almost impossible for anyone not to have gone through that experience, because I think about before I had these tools, that was a very healing experience to yell and release those feelings. It was
Was it
a
a healing experience, or did
well,
it feel
it,
like a healing?
okay, yeah, I think it was probably it felt more of like a healing to
Like getting it
because
off your chest.
right,
Like, I
right,
just need to be honest.
it's projecting, but it's honesty with the form of pushing someone down.
So why did you use the word healing?
Uh,
Because it felt good? Is that what you sort
right.
of
I
meant?
think that it felt like a release, right? It felt like,
I'm
oh,
finally getting it out.
well, and really, where I would say it's because what it is it's projecting, and that's why it feels good. You're projecting your
Oh.
reality, not
You're
connecting
finding
and
your
feeling the
voice, but
reality.
without elegance and intelligence. Right.
Right. So
Right.
so instead of using your experience to connect with someone and maybe feel through your emotions and transcend them, you're projecting your reality and kind of releasing them onto someone else, right? You're not evolving through your trauma, you're putting your trauma onto someone else.
Yeah, you're dumping it. Yeah. So it was great. This just 2 days ago, I got an email in the email blog, whatever, from Sounds True, and about a book called How We Ended Racism. I haven't read it yet, with a yellow infinity loop on the cover. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s family is involved with this. They're doing the foreword. It's tied to this organization they're involved with. And they have these 8 pillars of possibility, which is great. And they're all these principles in the infinity loop. And my concern has always been that there's great intellectuals today that are going, look, what's how we are handling racism today is not really aligned with the great luminaries of the past, like Martin Luther King Jr., or going back further, that would say how one would deal with racism. And that was my beef. I'm like, this is not going to be work that well, and it has had some very negative dividing consequences. But it's really interesting. Some of these pillars are healing, talking across divide, shadow work, forgiveness, calling one forward instead of calling one out, and more. So it's just a confirmation again that there is a way that we can handle all of these things that are done like not how do we honor and respect people who have been victimized, but not create what I call a cultic energy?
Or how do we not create more victims?
How do we not create more victims?
Because you just projecting your victimhood of your experience onto another is a form of creating trauma on someone else.
Yeah, and I help people heal from cults. I am an expert in that. It's a very niche area. I was in a cult almost 40 years ago for 2 years, from 18 to 20. And the amount that I have learned about cults, and the it's a very unique thing that happens, but I can recognize when I see that cultic um, culture, where, oh, these 2 authors are now going to say what everything is, and we all have to we all have to fall in line. And if you question anything, you then can be shamed. And that's where, again, being willing to be burned at the stake, to find that voice, to be able to find that fire that can be a leader in a situation where people are off course. And I was not in a place of strength uh, to 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 do that. Makes sense?
Very much
So
so.
it's very, that is part of it. That's where that fear and that cowardice, because being in the infinity loop is about pushing through to the fearless self. And where do we find that fearless self? Is because we nurture ourselves so much in living in this contemplative mind and finding the true self, that we're able to let go of the self.
Well, the infinity loop is putting on the armor to deal with the hard conversations. And part of putting on the armor is having the reflection, right? You have to look down at your arms as you put the sleeve of chainmail on or whatever. Like, you have to look at yourself as you are protecting yourself to go into these engagements. And it's not that we are putting spikes on ourselves to hurt others, but we are putting on something to have the discernment to protect ourselves,
Mm.
to kind of take on the criticism, because criticism isn't always easy, even when it's coming from a loving place. And so we need to
Mm.
have the strength to hear that and understand that it's not a diminishing factor of who we are, but a reflecting opportunity to become that knight in shining
I
armor.
love it. And the thing about having a sword, I mean, that is the sword of truth, which we're going to get more into, but it's how do we use, like a sword, in a beautiful healing way, wield that to speak truth uh, with such grace that cuts through the cultic, the bullshit, the downloaded thinking where we all need to comply, and there's no safety to be able to. That's what I love again about living in the infinity loop with the tribe of people is you can think out loud and anything is allowed to question.
Well, because it's a building
That's
process,
dialogue.
right? It's a building.
Okay, we're back. There's a little technical difficulties.
Dive right back into there will be ample.
Okay. There will be ample opportunities for us to see the error of our ways. As James Finley teaches, nothing happens without safety. And again, we're not talking about what's been termed safe spaces where we are so fragile that everyone's like even afraid to say anything, right?
But safety doesn't mean not to criticize or not to call
Speak
out. It
or to be
safety
honest.
safety means that the intention that the person is coming from with the criticism is a place of love and connection and not criticism, ridicule, or being demeaning.
Right.
Right?
So that's interesting, the word honesty, because, I'm just being honest. Is not
Correct.
real. That's a misnomer because being honest is actually filtered through the infinity loop because it's not the truth.
Well, it's
Like
you.
our projections are not the truth if they are not filtered with humility, curiosity, inquiry, connection, self-awareness to get past our own triggers and projections.
Let me be honest is like a guise to be a bitch or an asshole.
Yeah.
Instead of because even that phrase, let me be honest, as if your honesty is the ultimate truth.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of this is what I am experiencing through the information I have.
Mm-hmm.
When someone says this statement, oh, I just need to be honest, it really does come from a place of ultimate truth, as if they have all the
It's
information.
the ego.
And let me share my experience because my experience is all that matters in this moment.
Mm-hmm. And ego is not good at compassion and love.
Or understanding or perspective.
Yeah, it really is in the way. And it's very interesting because we're talking, the infinity loop is about so much about incorporating the divine feminine. And this woman was not in the divine feminine at all. I mean, you think about femininity represented from the egg. The egg is receiving, and yet the egg also has the ability to draw we're learning that the egg can even send out these little messages to go, oh, this is the kind of sperm I want to come at you. And then the masculine is the aggressor. And this aggressive, dominating, judgmental, self-righteous, dismissive, critical, disgust energy in the name of social justice and showing you the way is not the path that we will change the world.
Well, for me, anytime I hear the divine feminine, I immediately think of mother. And so to me, it's even if someone doesn't have kids, when they are operating in the divine feminine, they are operating in a way that a mother would operate. So when they are teaching you something or even scolding you, the scolding isn't coming from a I'm better than you and let me tell you
Can
what
we
you
use
did
the word
wrong.
correct? I hate the word scold because it's
Well, the reason I use the word scold is because that is what mothers do to their children, right? They scold their kids, but that can be
look up that definition.
from a place of love, where if it is done correctly, the child never doubts the love that the mother
I would
has.
love to use the word correct.
Okay, well, okay.
Can we use the word correct? Yeah. I would love to know what the definition of scold actually means because I feel like it's kind of a dirty word. You know what I mean? I mean, being your mother.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't
You don't
think
think of it as a bad.
right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think any words is bad. I don't think there's
Yes.
such thing as bad words. I
Uh
think
huh.
they
Well,
have
they could be
different.
packed and
Correct.
interpreted away,
They could be heavy meaninged.
and the scolding. It
Um,
could be packed with the critical energy. I guess that's the point I'm at.
okay. Well, so even if it's correcting, so I guess the reason why I like scolding over correcting is because scolding is directing from you did actually something wrong,
Okay.
right? Where correcting is usually how I would refer to as more of a peer. A peer would more correct you,
Hmm.
where someone above you, like your mother, would be scolding you.
Mm-hmm.
Because and to me, scolding is when you did something wrong, knowing you did something wrong. Correcting is you did something how you maybe thought it should be done, and someone is maybe showing you a better way of doing it. Right? Do you see that difference?
So, are
Where
you saying that I am the embodiment of divine feminine, and you liked my scolding of you?
well, again, scolding to me though is when you're correcting someone, or but they knew what they were doing was
They
wrong.
knew what they were
That's what
doing
I'm
was
getting at.
wrong.
So
Right.
correcting someone
Okay.
can do
Beautiful,
something,
beautiful,
and you could
beautiful.
go, oh, there's another way you could have done that better. Okay, that's you.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
scolding
I
someone.
wasn't actually doing
To me,
anything wrong in the meeting, as far as I know,
right?
as
But
in reflection, as of this day, over 6 years
right,
later. Right.
but they were trying to scold you, but they weren't scolding you in a way that a mother would. And that is kind of what I was getting at,
Mm.
is that if you are scolding someone not in the loving, not coming from the mother, then it does come. Then it can be much more packed and
Beautiful.
much
The good
more
mother.
right. Right.
The good mother.
The
The good
good mother, the
parent.
good mother that does scold doesn't isolate the child when they're scolded, because they go, you knew you're not supposed to leave your dish there. Why didn't you put your dish in the dishwasher? Or you know what I mean? And that's where the scolding, where someone goes, okay, you did it this way. We could do it this way because this is how
Okay.
the company.
I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think
Well,
this is good.
so the whole point of why I was bringing that up was the power of a woman coming from that
Or the
motherly.
feminine energy that could be in either sex.
Right. Well, so from
However
my
you represent yourself.
experience, whether it is male or female, when we don't like how they are trying to fix things, they are coming from the dominator model. Right. And so it doesn't matter if it's a male or female, they are coming from that dominator model, and that's not coming from the divine
I
feminine.
love it.
And so it doesn't mean that
you're so good.
that you can't correct someone, that correcting is all of a sudden masculine. No, no, no. You can correct someone or scold them, but still be scolding them from a place of love, not of a dominator
I
place.
love it. I love it. I've lost many people in my life, and many have lost me. Sometimes relationships end, and they should, because some relationships can't be fixed by a confrontation. We need to step out of engagement in the infinity loop to push past people's no, because we think they need to hear our truth isn't loving or effective. If we don't start with the awareness of where we contributed, how in the world do we think the other person will welcome in our unwelcomed critical assessment of them? This is one of the ways we cause trauma. This isn't about a highly skilled intervention for an alcoholic who's destroying his own life or her own life. It's about someone we don't agree with and their reactions, and it bugs the hell out of us. Is it clear what I'm saying? Is I don't like that person didn't like me, they didn't like my reactions, and they are so annoyed that they feel like they need to confront because they saw something different.
Well, it's someone that's trying to take control of the situation.
Trying to shame me because actually they were feeling enormous shame. Yeah. Beside and overcompensating for their own shame. Beside the people we can't stay connected with for a myriad of reasons, there's also a certain segment of the population who cannot see themselves or who will never own their own behavior. I'm bringing that up again. These are people we can't engage with in the infinity loop. And I just want to make a quick touch back to the last episode where I was lamenting that I was not coming from more vulnerability and tenderness, and then I had armored myself. It was interesting because we did this podcast. It really brought it to my awareness, and then I had a redo, another opportunity with this person, and I came so open-hearted and vulnerable and gracious, and their response back was very disturbing. And like you say, Riley, it really shows you when you practice these principles, who doesn't want to be in the infinity loop, who doesn't want to be accountable or live in the light or truth or stay connected to you. And it ended up ending the relationship with this person.
Well, what comes to my mind is a phrase I like to say: we don't judge those who don't have the tools for the job, but we do judge those who are unwilling to learn the tools when presented.
Yeah.
Right? It's we don't
After a
expect
long
we don't
time.
expect everyone to have these tools, but when they choose to try and engage with us and have a relationship with us, we do expect them to learn these tools as we present them. And when you are unwilling to learn these tools, then we have our discernment to protect ourselves and make the decision that we are unwilling to have the relationship with
Yeah.
that person.
And when you say judge, it's like small judge versus big judge versus a judgment over their entire being, but more of the help. Like they say, the word judgment has like 3 different levels to it. And one is very healthy versus the judgment that makes this person all bad. But it's like sound judgment to go, oh, this is not workable. This is not no longer a healthy engagement with somebody.
That's our discernment.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a good, brings so many good points. This isn't about, okay, I said that. Besides the people we can't stay connected, okay, I said that these. I teach empathy, but that isn't always what's needed. I teach inquiry, awareness, and connection. But all 3 of those may lead us to the conclusion we no longer want to stay in the infinity loop with someone. I teach how to step back from our ego, but we also need a healthy ego sense of self to push back and stand for what we believe is right. This woman could not handle the fact that I defended myself at all, or that I even spoke. That I she like there was
wanted
no place for that. Yeah.
She wanted you to stand on the block and take the whipping.
Yeah. That was going to somehow bring healing, and it was
pay for your sins.
It was very interesting. This one man who had he was black and older and had a lot of internalized trauma of things that happened to him, when he was a kid. And at the end of the meeting, he ended up dying. So he was, that's another thing he was probably dealing with. I didn't know it, but he was cancer. I'm dying like 7 months later. But he looked at me at the end, and I think he felt so sad of what happened in the meeting. And I looked at him, and, I don't hold that in any way against his own pain. It was the lack of, again, facilitation, the lack of tools that we need if we're really going to handle changing the world.
Well, if the goal isn't to just have a victim pity party, you need to create the rules of engagement and the goal. I think neither of those were set up from the very beginning, which creates just an environment for people to release their trauma onto others.
Mm-hmm. Or we get involved with these things from our own kind of communal narcissism and spiritual pride that we're on the right side and we're conforming to the right view of how to handle, all these social issues. In life, even if we're off, we can only be where we are. We all respond at the level of consciousness we are at this time.
And I think the whole thing about the infinity loop is, how do we help level up our consciousness? And that's ultimately what it is it's that we're always, no matter who we are on this journey, we're always trying to level up our consciousness. And ultimately, when you reach a certain level of it, you need others to level it up. And so that is what this infinity loop is about, continuously building our consciousness together. This is what I'm seeing. Tell me what I'm not.
So good. We behave in line with how we see things through our mental models. Even when we know what is the better way to behave, we sometimes choose to do what works for us instead of what is loving, kind, and right. So even in that, we don't have the consciousness and integrity to do what we know to be right. For that, we need compassion. And that I can say is I know, I very often know when what's coming out of my mouth is not right, but I don't even have the consciousness to transcend that. Because if I did, I wouldn't do it. That's why it's like we really are, I believe, doing the best we can, because we wouldn't do it if we truly had the capacity to be better.
Well, and then once you accept that fundamental acknowledgement, then you have the overwhelming acceptance and forgiveness to anyone that has ever hurt you. So for me, I see so many people holding on to this trauma of their childhood not being perfect and blaming their parents as if their parents weren't doing the best they could with what they had. And I think once that is acknowledged in yourself, you can start healing that childhood trauma and letting it go, and starting to truly love yourself more and love your parents more, because you realize no matter how good or bad of a job they did the best with the tools they had.
I mean, that's, you are the shining example of that and the relationship you have with your parents. And it's so beautiful. It's because of the principle of forgiveness.
Weirdly enough, it's hard to, as a kid, I guess, or as a 33-year-old man, you don't realize, it takes a while to realize how much your parents had a life before you existed. And I think even into my early 20s, it wasn't something I thought about. And then as I'm in my early 20s dealing with all my own problems, realizing, oh, my parents probably went through their early 20s dealing with these crazy problems. Maybe that could have some more compassion and understanding for why they did what they did. And I don't know how we create that reflection in people, but I believe that the infinity loop helps create that environment to constantly have that reflection.
So good. Oh, so good. Concerning the ordeal around the meeting at my house, I didn't respond to every interaction in emotional sobriety. I'll explain later in a further chapter what that means. F off comes out of me in the rarest of situations. However, the intensity of the emotions through the whole ordeal got my attention. The ordeal happened because I stopped listening to the message of my emotions. My suffering got my attention, meaning I knew before the meeting I shouldn't have had it. Right after the meeting, the great love affair began. the love affair with ourselves. If I had had the self-love prior to that encounter, that self-love would have alerted me to honor myself and not continue with relationships that don't serve. Someone asked me after reading this, if you had been in the infinity loop, would you have handled the meeting at your house differently? I was caught in a situation where there was no way it would be okay. I would have been grounded in my integrity and discernment to not have allowed the meeting to occur because I knew it wasn't going to go well based on the dynamics that preceded. Through connection to myself, through awareness and self-inquiry and hearing my support system's inquiry into why I would participate, I would not have gone forward with the meeting. It was my ego's version of trying to be good and brave.
Yeah, I really think also if you were more stepped into your infinity loop strength when that happened, you would have actually just more taken charge.
Yeah.
Because it was your space.
I would have,
and
it was
I
my
think,
house.
so I think you would have
Said, wait, yeah.
well, would have set the ground rules. Right? I think that is kind of where the infinity loop is, where just those simple things of creating ground rules and creating a goal of expectations, I think could have really directed it into a very different direction.
Yes, and I would not have cared what anyone thought about me or being judged or I would not have been in that false shadow, feminine,
and when they were
overly submissive,
and when they would have
at the beginning.
came at a place of attacking you, you could have then reverted back to the rules of engagement.
I would have had to take over. I would have actually had to kick everybody out of my house. That's really the only option. They was going to say, yeah.
But I don't think it would have escalated to that point when the rules of engagement are set into place.
But that was the problem. I was interfering. I was disturbing the system, and that was the problem. So it was caught in such a bad situation because it was beautiful. Yes, thank you for giving me grace earlier and saying it was sort of my intention to wanting to be open. But it was also, I know this part of me that is the false self that hides behind trying to be so open, and actually it's false because it's not an integrity. It's unwilling. Like I had gone too far down the path of allowing someone's domination to take over. I should have stopped at the beginning going, no, this is wrong. Just the integrity. No, this is not how these kind of things should be going down. I don't care where you got your training, but I am not in agreement with it. So it was my false self that put me in that situation. It was good and brave would have been canceling the meeting and being honest about what didn't feel right about the relationships. Always wanting to be open to learning isn't helpful without discernment. Never use tools of communication or spiritual growth as a weapon. Research shows that when we're shamed, our brains don't learn well. It doesn't mean the other person won't feel appropriate shame for what they did when they hear our truth. I'm still in the camp of using the word healthy shame. I know that's not popular anymore, but I think there is a place for it's a healthy sense of, without the toxic shame, I am bad, but a sense of shame of, ooh, what I did was not okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you don't have level of shame, you don't have levels of morality.
Yeah. I'm in that camp. It's how we communicate that will more likely help them feel safe enough to face it. Love is the most powerful force to help us learn. How we talk to ourselves is how we talk to others is most likely how we talk to ourselves. Our true selves love us, and from there, we're gentle and safe. The other person always has the right to say no, and in some cases, it's F off. We're free. Let others have their freedom too. The infinity loop doesn't work for everyone in every situation. It's beautiful when it does, but we're okay, loved, and lovable when it doesn't.
Amen.
Woo.
If that's not a call to action, I don't know what is. As we feel all those emotions, we move into this next chapter with the bounce. Sometimes our souls co-create what will bring the great death, because we know great love and great suffering are opportunities for deeper transformation. The great mystery, how our wounds are used to lead us to deeper healing. Two quotes by Krista Vorse.
The bounce is not to be used to be insensitive to one in the midst of loss. It isn't intended to dismiss our pain nor to fix anything. You'll sense what the bounce means in your life. When I say we may co-create the great death, to be clear, I in no way refer to physical death. The bounce is about something else, and it happens in different ways and different times. Let us ever be sensitive to those suffering. This is about the transformational path where what we go through will expand us. In the sacredness of our suffering, we're transformed. In loss, we honor the grief as our love for what was lost. We'll all face heartache. Sometimes we get hit by a grief or trauma that all but kills us. We may need to escape into the tent to receive nurture. Others are needed to show up for us in connection, awareness, and inquiry, to hear what we need in this despair. Some of us have to keep going in the midst of the trauma because that's what's required of us and because we're able to. Whether it's how to weather the storms we're in or how to transform trauma, my work is about the bounce. Love holds us and life calls our name, even when it doesn't look like what we thought. But there's beauty even in that. The bounce is also about how when we drop into connection, awareness, and inquiry, infinite possibilities spring back up. When we drop what we think we know, are willing to unlearn and allow the fall, we bounce back up to a bigger life. We're more than we thought we were. That's true life.
Yeah, I think of just in my own life with my girlfriend, and where we have conversations where she's maybe getting a little emotionally overwhelmed being in medical school, and there will be a problem that comes up, and she'll go to the absolute, this is the way it is, there's no other solution, because she's so constricted in her views. And I really try and calm her down and go, well, let's look at where that is not true, where there really are other options to solve this, where we can step back and go, well, you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking about something in very particular where she goes, there's no other option. And literally in her explaining that there's no other option, she explained 3 other options while saying there is no other option. And by just asking questions about, well, what about this that you even said was, and she goes, oh, you know, it is slowing down the thinking. And
that's beautiful. And we're going to, that whole, it's so good. Yeah. And that we'll get into that. Also, another thing about the levels of awareness, and when we're in constricted awareness, we don't see options, right?
Well,
and you bring it into expanded awareness.
And that's why it's so important to have a partner, you know, because when we are in that constricted awareness, there is no, I mean, you can, well, in the sense of,
you do that for me.
Right. We're all partners in life, in
the team sport.
Right. If we are choosing to step in the infinity loop, we're always helping each other have the bigger perspective.
That's so good. The bounce is also about how when we drop into, when we drop what as we enter into the infinity loop where we're more vulnerable, we're dislodged from our comfortable place. That's what I was talking about last week. It's like James Finley talks about, we're this, sort of like this little rock in the cliff in the ocean, and then we get dislodged and we just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's vulnerable, but we're falling into the abyss of love of the ocean. That's just that oneness, that spaciousness that holds the whole world. That's the great paradox. No one will achieve what's possible if they don't decide to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's what it's like, because it's letting go. It is the ego control every time, being uncomfortable. That's having a growth mindset. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the physical practice of those are things like the cold plunge, breathing exercises, extreme working out. Those are the physical versions of being comfortable with the uncomfort. The emotional and communication one, to me, is being open to being criticized, being open to your mistakes, to feeling your feelings and not projecting them onto others, but allow them to move through you and move out of you. It's not that you don't feel the anger or hate. It's that you don't allow that to manifest itself in a negative format in your life.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is that being comfortable in the uncomfort. It's uncomfortable to be angry. It's uncomfortable to be disturbed by something. But it's so much more terrible to then release that on someone.
Yeah.
When we are trying to when we are trying to transcend it.
That's so good. The bounce is about how our lives are enlarged because of the turbulence. Our hearts enlarge as we let the pain crack us open and dislodge us from our comfortable crevice to go deeper into the great abyss of love. What I was just saying. We see with new eyes in solidarity with suffering. That's a principle that I've lived with for decades, of understanding every time I'm suffering, I'm actually connected to every other person that has ever suffered like this, and it enlarges my life. I'm not alone, I'm in connection.
No one is ever alone in their suffering. It doesn't matter if you are in isolation, you are, in a jail cell. You are never suffering alone.
The connection we feel for the rest of humanity bounces us back into a life of profound meaning. We're transformed. We walk around the earth as having touched the underworld and found the mystery to be our new normal. I would say that is how I live, and that's the heart of the mystic. It's a high we get as our egos dissolve who we were to the new who that touches the oneness with the world, the abundance that comes from the true self. It's about learning to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care as we bounce back from trauma, abuse, loss, addiction, codependency, family crisis, divorce, life changes, etc. These challenges hit us as we do this work. We allow and move through all emotions and stages. We grieve, honor, learn, and heal.
Right? It's not about all of a sudden you learn these tools and these challenges don't happen anymore. No, it's about these challenges are going to happen, and no matter who you are, what you are dealing with in life, it's about having the tools to be able to get through to the other side of these challenges.
Yeah, and I find by being in the infinity loop, I absolutely feel things more, because it's dissolving any numbing that I used to have as a coping mechanism. So things become, you're more awake. You see the disturbances. You see what's not okay. What am I not seeing?
Well, it's the small disturbance is more noticeable. It might not bother you the same level because you are transcending your emotions, but you then become more heightened aware of that, and then vice versa, how the little nuanced things that we do and how they affect others.
We embrace the gift as we learn to live in each moment. That calm becomes our deepest reality as a moment by moment we tend to what's needed of us. We neither project into the future nor get stuck in the past. And when I mean project, I don't mean we can't envision the future. I mean you're leaving the present moment versus having an awareness that the present moment can hold the past and the future. It's a different
For me,
energy.
that's holding a lot of similar feeling of when someone tells you how you're feeling, right? It's they're projecting the future as if they know it, without even asking questions, right? It's the same along that same line of when someone tells you you're feeling something instead of asking if you're feeling that way.
We're grateful, less entitled, and humbled as we realize how comfortable we were. The veil is torn and we pass through. Life will never be the same, and that's beautiful. We let go and learn to be of service to the world in a healthy way, full of self-love that's poured out onto others. There's always the bounce, and it's no longer about our need to do everything right. Mercy and grace are part of the deal now. No need to hide our flaws, and so we wear them for the world to see. We want our insides to match our outsides. That's actually what Rohr teaches is the highest level of spiritual development, what St. Francis of Assisi had.
To me, it's the highest level of vulnerability also
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
truly showing up your truest self.
That's why
which being vulnerable.
That's what we're doing here, and all the flaws of me talking in half sentences, not waiting until I have that perfect. But yeah, St. Francis of Assisi was known for he wore his garment full of the holes because he goes, I want to show that's what I'm like on the inside too. I don't want to pretend I'm anything other. And he was, perhaps one of the freest people that ever walked the earth. We
Then
know
others.
yeah.
No, then others will.
Then others will feel safe to show themselves, and we cover their shame with a blanket of love. We look into their eyes and they're transformed. As Richard Rohr says, transformed people transform people. Our life is not our own, but it belongs to love, capital L, and we like it that way. We create a life in tune with our deepest truths, gifts, and joys. When we lose our lives, we gain them. And what a bounce it is. Losing our lives to the control, the self-ego.
To the illusion of things as they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? Get rid of that illusion of how things are supposed to be and accept the truth of what they are and embrace them to become the best version of what they are by being present.
That's the bounce. There's something remarkable that happens when we take the transformational path as a reflex to what transpires in our lives. When we have wise counsel to guide us, the suffering creates a profound intimacy with ourselves. Oh my God, that is so true. It is so intimate to walk in the great love affair with your soul, to have that intimacy with your life and your suffering, that you can hold it and you don't have to medicate it and flee it and go shopping to not feel it all. That's the paradox.
Well, it's seeing your wounds, not labeling them, not beating yourself up for them, and then transcending them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you transcend. Yeah. If we're able to not believe the lie that what we go through diminishes us in any way, or believe the lies that were perpetrated upon us, we bounce into the reflex of the great love affair with ourselves. Great suffering is a doorway to great love. We know that whatever comes against us, whatever knocks us to the ground, will rise again. Wonder Woman rose again in the power of great love when her necessary nemesis knocked her to the ground, and out of her anguish her roar did rise. She knew love was calling her to rise again. Love is calling us to do the same. It's the bounce. It's the bounce. Come bounce with us. We'd love to have you in our family.
Thanks again for joining us on the Infinity Loop Group podcast. If these things resonated with you, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share with others. It really helps us out to spread this message and make the world a better, loving, connected place. Have a blessed day.